Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to today's video where we are talking about this lunar eclipse in Scorpio. So for this video, I'm going through the energy of the lunar eclipse based on the Saros cycle, based on the aspects. I'm going to break it down by rising sign and we'll briefly cover the mundane aspects. If you haven't already done so, make sure you also check out the solar eclipse in Taurus video that is on my channel. And before we get into the video, right now I have a flash sale going on readings. You can get 40% off an astrology consultation with me. These are for the 1 hour or 1.5 hour readings that I offer. And there is a link below that you can get in on this special offer. And if you are watching this video afterwards and you're disappointed you didn't get in on it, get on my email list, grab the free guide, Align with Your Midheaven. You'll get that, and you'll also get notified every time I do a sale in the future. So now let's get into the video. This lunar eclipse is happening in Scorpio at 25 degrees. It is happening on May 15th, 2022 at 9:12 p.m. Pacific time. And it is a lunar eclipse, which means the moon is opposite the sun. And it means the moon, in this case, the moon is with the south node. So it's a south node lunar eclipse. The south node eclipses tend to be more about releasing, letting go. And so does a lunar eclipse. So this cycle with the solar eclipse, with the sun, with this north node, and the lunar eclipse with the south node really does, create this cycle of a new beginning that happened with that solar eclipse, and then a letting go. When we add something new to our life, sometimes there isn't enough room to hold everything new and something has to be released, right? When we add something to our time, we have to stop doing something else at that time. And so that is one of the themes that we can see here with this solar and lunar eclipse. This is also a total eclipse. So the solar eclipse we just had in Taurus was a partial solar eclipse, which means the light was not fully blocked out. It also means that eclipse wasn't quite as strong. Now with this total lunar eclipse, the total eclipses tend to be stronger, and it means that the light is more blocked out fully, as opposed to the partial where it's only some of the light blocked out. Another way to look at this, astrologically speaking, is the closer the sun or the moon are to the nodes during an eclipse, the more powerful the eclipse is. So moving on now to the original chart of the Saros cycle. So for this Saros cycle 131, the original chart has Mercury conjunct the sun. This aspect really infuses Mercury into the energy of this eclipse, making it more focused on communication, more focused on writing, speaking, listening, processing things mentally, planning things. Sometimes it could, for some people, deal with, shipping and receiving or something else like that. But, Mercury is trade, it's communication, it's how things get to us. So trade could be in focus during this eclipse as far as world events go. Shipping and receiving could be in focus here. And I'll talk more about that later. But basically, our self-examination may be highlighted at this time. And, for people who have their own businesses, this might be a time where you're focused on marketing, focused on how you are getting your messaging out, what kind of messages we are sending to ourselves and to other people. The chart for this Saros cycle has an exact square from Mercury to Chiron in Pisces. Now, the whole energy of this chart does have a big T-square between the sun, the moon, and Mars. Mars T-squares the eclipse in this original chart. Mars is the ruler of the eclipse in this original chart and in this eclipse we're having now. So what does that mean? And that this isn't the most positive aspect we want to see in an eclipse cycle, because that square to Mars is not friendly. Mars squaring anything is not a friendly aspect. It's a tense aspect. It's aggression. It's people, wanting to attack people. It is sharp objects, right? Mars is the planet of war. So it's confrontation. It's people butting heads, things not going smoothly, fights, things like this. Now, for us energetically, this can be inner tension. But then the way Chiron factors in here is it's opposite Mars in that chart. But because Chiron is in Pisces and it's not in the end of Aquarius, it makes an out of sign opposition to Mars. So it doesn't really fully flow into that T-square, making it a grand cross. So because of this point, this Chiron in Pisces point in that original Saros cycle chart is a very sensitive point. Okay, so I want to talk about what Chiron in Pisces means. Oftentimes with Chiron in Pisces, it's like we want to believe in the universe, but something has blocked that belief. And for people with this placement, it's a really tough one because it brings up this belief that God has forsaken us, that the universe has deserted us. Okay, so we all may have this feeling come up at different levels, right? This may not be very strong for you at this point, but there could be that feeling like, why isn't the universe supporting me? And I do think that being Scorpio and Taurus, that part of the reason we might be feeling this way is because this is a time for us to learn to support ourselves. This feels like a very strong theme in life and in the energetics right now, is that the universe can't support us and we like stand on our own 2 feet at the same time. And so this is a time where we kind of have to do the heavy lifting in our lives with the things that we want to happen. And so another way that this can express, because there is that exact square to Chiron and Pisces from Mercury, we can have inner tension, about our desire to express ourselves in the most natural way and just be who we are, versus, this fear that if we do that, everyone we love will leave us and we won't be supported. So this can bring up this feeling for everyone where it's like, do I speak my truth? Do I be honest and let the people who need to leave? Or do I stay quiet to keep the peace? Do I stay quiet because I'm so convinced that if I don't, something horrible will happen? And so we all may have our own sort of lessons and challenges around this tension and this aspect at this time. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that in this chart, this Saros cycle chart, Chiron is trine Pluto in Cancer. And so to me, I wrote this down, you guys, because it's really important. This trine here, Pluto in Cancer, is like our evolutionary need for emotional stability. And, what happens with this trine is it can bring this actualization of this evolutionary lesson of healing and emotional security. So we might see now that we need to heal, like what we need to heal. We might realize some lessons that have accumulated over time of the past, of us dealing with our own feeling of being rooted within our own selves, being safe within our own selves. This theme of security is really coming up strong here, so we can understand at some level the cycles of life that we've had with our own emotional security up until this point. And there's an understanding of the past that has gotten us to this moment and a need to put those lessons to creative use. So we really have a lot of power right now, even though for some people they may not feel like it at this time. And because we do have some challenging aspects in this Saros cycle chart, it's a T-square. T-squares are not comfortable. It's 3 squares, so that's not like 1 square is not comfortable. So a T-square is like extra tension from all sides. So when I always talk about squares, it's like you can actually feel like the walls are crashing in. But the way to use the energy of a square is to find that pressure and push against it and use that as a force to, propel yourself into action. So I also feel like with this chart and with what's going on here, that this is an aspect of destiny. So if you have been working hard on your destiny, your soul path, really trying hard to move forward on that path, at this time, you may feel that, you may feel that there is a destined opportunity, but you have to go through that Chiron wound. And remember, this is the Chiron wound in aspect of that chart. So this is not our own individual Chirons. It is the collective wound of when there are horrible things in life, are we going to lose hope? When there is war and there is tragedy, are we going to decide that means that there is nothing to look forward to? This is the collective wound that we are dealing with at this time. And for those that have been, like I said, have been working on this destined opportunity, it's like you may find that you have something open up that feels like that. Now, this doesn't mean it'll be easy or it'll be all roses. This energy, it really doesn't feel like that to me in any way. It feels a little bit more challenging. But there's also beauty in the path and in walking down the path. Now, for those who are feeling more like, oh, I don't really know what my path is, I'm trying to find my purpose, this may be a time where a path opens up for you, some clarity happens for you, and you're able to somehow align with some kind of forward direction. It doesn't mean you're going to have like a lottery win, or that, a lot of us, it's not like we're at the pinnacle moment where like we reach that point of glory. It's more like we're somewhere along the path and we have a little opening or a little help or a little assistance that gets us to that next step. And for some, that assistance may come in the form of a challenge that we have to solve. So going back to talk about this fixed T-square, a fixed anything, guys, is hard to know when to adjust, okay? Because fixed energy will be very stubborn. It will be very consistent. It's great at like showing up and keeping with something and staying consistent. But where fixed energy really struggles is, when do you change? When do you let something go? With a bunch of fixed squares like this, it can be hard to know when to back down and when to let something go. On a mundane level in the world, we may see things come to an impasse. We may see things in a deadlock, right? So this would be like boats that can't move, boats that get stuck, transportation that gets stuck, transportation that can't move for some reason. We could also see this kind of deadlock in our relationships where two parties cannot come to an agreement. Now, we could also see this politically in the world where there's negotiations happening and the negotiations stop because both sides are not, willing to come to an agreement. They're both set in their ways and no one's going to compromise. So this is something we could see. Again, in our personal relationships, we could be in situations where, again, both parties won't change. And like things get stuck because of this, situations get stuck. Collaborations don't get pushed forward. Business associations don't get pushed forward. Challenges with family dynamics where, your mom wants you to come to the party, but you don't want to come, and no one is budging. No one is compromising. That's just one random example. Apply that to your life, how it fits. So then we have another aspect in this Saros cycle chart, which is Mars square Moon. Now, again, I've talked about this Mars a lot because it's a big, huge energy in this. But, with Mars squaring the Moon, this is annoying. It is frustrations. It is also, from a mundane level, a world level, Mars squaring the Moon can be like taking away the rights of women or, doing things that somehow in the world cause challenge for women or children, but they advance military. So this could be like cutting the budget for schools and then now more money goes to the military. Right? Like this is just one example. It can also be, someone aggressive or more confrontational, getting in a fight with their mom. It can be many, many other things. But on an emotional internal level, this can be frustrating because, Mars is like the planet of desire, action, and the moon is very soft and represents our own internal emotions, what we need to feel okay. So to have these in a square, tension like this, it's like we might not be able to take the actions we need to take to have self-care. We might be struggling with how we are not letting go of certain vices, certain habits, certain ways of being that we know are not good for us, but it's just hard to let go of. It's like, those two energies, they're in conflict with each other. One minute you're eating healthy, the next minute you're having tacos and ice cream. Right. And then it's not just the experience of not eating healthy. It's the experience of wanting to take care of yourself in some way, wanting to go to bed early, and then you get stuck watching an action movie and you're up all night again. Or, that super hot guy or girl, comes over and you guys are up all night again. So those are just some examples of how Mars square the moon could be happening, where our passions, our desires, our carnal earthly desires sort of are not quite in sync, or sort of having tension with our actual needs. This is wants versus needs. And sometimes Mars wins, right? So we might be spending more time on the things we want and not able to have a real compromise and bring ourselves back to the things that we actually need. Another thing that can happen here is it can make us feel defensive, ready to fight. And it's like our guard is up when Mars is square the moon. Now, in this same Saros cycle chart, Mars is quincunx Jupiter. So this can be an energizing aspect, but it brings up the question of how are we using our energy, right? So we can feel impulsive, especially if for some reason we feel like we are not being treated right. So the question of rights being honored, people getting what they deserve, protests of all kinds, whether it be on a world stage or in your life where you are protesting that is your parking spot and you deserve it. Okay, so it's easy at this time, though, to jump on these social bandwagons to fight for justice that are not necessarily, aligned or thought out. So watch out for that. Watch out for collective movements that are reactionary, responding to something wrong. This could be happening, but it's likely that if these movements spring up at this time of this lunar eclipse or within the month, that they may not be well thought out because there is this sort of impulsive, reactionary energy infused into this. Now, it can also be harder for us to see where we are not being realistic with our goals and expectations. There can also be temptations to clap back at other people and just keep going on some road that you probably shouldn't be going down, instead of making adjustments, right? Because remember that fixed square, adjustments will need to be made, but this can just bring us into that deadlock energy of, no, I'm not changing this. One thing that you can do with this transit is if you have any, pent up energy, any aggression, trying to funnel that into something positive, something constructive, instead of just getting in fights with everyone. And I don't remember which aspect it was I was looking up on these, but one of the things that can happen is you can get frustrated and you can blame that frustration on something that totally isn't what it is. This would be like a friend called and we got in a big fight, and then I'm out and I'm mad at traffic, right? I'm mad that the guy in front of me is going slow, but that doesn't normally bother me, right? And so this can happen with all these aspects combined, is that we can be frustrated about something, not be honest with ourselves about the source of that frustration, and then take it out on someone else or something else. So moving on now to Mars trine Venus in this chart, we have good chemistry in relationships, at least. And actually, with the Mars square, that could actually make it even better, because Mars squares can make for some good passion, okay? Not gonna lie. This is a good time actually to ask someone out, flirt, date, have fun, and just bring more passion into an existing relationship. And honestly, guys, if you don't at this time, with the way the energy is, there can be little bickering or little fights in your relationships if you're not like, getting all passionate, if you're not connecting on a physical level, because there is a need for that here, especially with, Scorpio energy. Another way that Mars trine Venus can be positive is if you have a creative outlet. Mars trine Venus during this eclipse can possibly infuse you with more energy, more inspiration, more drive to express your creativity. It's like beautiful action, Mars trine Venus, motivated to do things that are ruled by Venus, like be beautiful, make friends, fall in love, have sex. So all of these things could be highlighted at this time. We also have the moon conjunct Saturn. It's within 10 degrees. It's not the closest conjunction, but it is here in this chart of the Saros cycle. And, we can see things as worse than they really are when we have Saturn involved in anything. We can feel gloomy. We can feel pessimistic. We can be a little bit down. We can feel guilty. Okay. With Saturn like this, we can feel guilty for things. We can feel a need to go over the past. I'll talk more about this later when we get to the aspects for this actual lunar eclipse. But basically, with Saturn here, we can start comparing ourselves to where we think we should be versus where we actually are. We can, get down on ourselves for all the times we weren't responsible. We can also feel a need to be more responsible, to get, more serious about something and stop messing around, and step up and do it the right way. So moving on now to Venus square Jupiter in the Saros cycle chart. This is also good for personal relationships, socializing, making friends, marketing, networking, having fun with people, getting to know people, going to parties, just letting loose. And so there really is a need at this time to socialize, and that comes through really strong. With Sun trine Jupiter in this chart, this puts out the vibe that everything is working right for me. Now, this is good that we have this while we have that Saturn on the moon, but I'm afraid that the Saturn on the moon could win in this case. But at least, this Sun trine Jupiter is going to at least help us to see the possibility within whatever reality check may be happening. Also, Neptune trining Uranus here. Now, this is really big for heightened intuition, and there were a couple of aspects that I saw for this that were good. So this is really good for, spiritual experiences, spiritual awakening, opening up our perception, seeing beyond the veil, having epiphanies, realizing things, healing, awakenings, aha moments. This is all possible with these aspects. Now, some people who have latent psychic abilities could develop them at this time. If you're someone who is trying to develop your intuition, it's a really good time for that with this full moon lunar eclipse. So that is what I have for the energies of the Saros cycle, which is like a stamp, that gets infused into each eclipse that we see in this cycle. And now we're going to move on to the actual aspects of the full moon lunar eclipse. We have Saturn square the nodes and the eclipse. This is probably the most significant thing. So, it can feel hard to fulfill our destiny, even though we're feeling called to it, even though it feels more important at this time, even though we might be inspired with all the Pisces planets that we've had going on. Especially, having that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that we just went through. This could be a time where we feel like, okay, now we know what the dream is, but we're coming into this energy of how do we make this a reality? Or we saw the dream, we figured out how to make it a reality, and now it's like day 17 of doing the work, the same work over and over and over again, and we start to feel just like that, the high come down from the dream, where we're in the reality, we're in the muck, where we have our hands dirty now. And then, again, Saturn squaring the nodes, it can be challenges moving forward on our path. It can be an unresolved sense of guilt. And, especially relating to the house that Saturn transits in your chart. So really paying attention to where is Saturn in your chart? Do you have a feeling that you should have done something in that area of life coming up? And, for a lot of us, there is going to be a need to kind of grow up, put on our big girl panties or our big boy pants and, figure it out. And there can be a beauty in that, a beauty in the willingness to do whatever it takes. That's the beautiful side of Saturn, is that it feels good when you do something hard and then you succeed. You can't actually win with Saturn taking a shortcut, because even if you do get to the end of the race, you feel bad because you didn't try that hard. There is beauty in stepping up to something difficult. So that is something that we might see if we're looking for the more positive connotation. We also have Neptune trining the moon, which is increased sensitivity and intuition. It's also, this potential here for spiritual growth, just like I talked about earlier, healing the heart, dissolving the boundaries. Neptune dissolves. It dissolves the boundaries and the walls that we have up normally, and it allows us to have forgiveness and healing more so than the average, more so than on average. However healing and forgiveness oriented you are, there's more to be had at this time. It also represents compassion. It's the crown chakra. It's oneness. It's that feeling that we're all connected. It can increase our mother instinct to take care of people and want to make them feel okay and end suffering and help people. Now, the challenge to this aspect is that we have to make sure that the person we're helping really wants our help in the first place, because that mothering instinct can be so strong, and we can just try to support someone who just really, really doesn't need it or want it. So that's something to watch out for. And with this one as well, dormant psychic abilities can open up. So some of us may see this where we get an upgrade, or if you've been developing your intuition, that it's able to expand under this transit. We also have Neptune conjunct Mars for this lunar eclipse. So this can easily dissolve our will. It can be easy to be deceived as well, because Neptune it can dissolve. And Mars is our willpower, our passion, our physical desires in the world, our lower nature desires, whereas Pluto would be more of our soul's desires. And then Neptune can also be like capital L love, right? So it's either going to dissolve and make something foggy, or it's going to be that capital L love that brings this transcendence and this higher energy. So again, it can dissolve our will. So we could really feel during this, lunar eclipse, we don't want to do nothing. And perhaps that Saturn square might be part of the reason. Part of the reason we feel unmotivated is we're looking at the climb up the mountain, and we're seeing how many steps it would take, and we just can't be bothered to even take one. Now, I think this energy will pass. So even if you're feeling it really strong, the not being bothered to do anything energy, it's gonna pass. We can, again, here with this Neptune and Mars, we can see suffering and want to fix it, want to solve it, want to help. We can be more easygoing in areas where we're normally competitive. Now, that can be good or bad depending on what you are working on, right? So if you need to be really cutthroat in your business and you're in high ticket sales, well, you may not be quite as sharp as normal. But if you're normally too competitive in some area, it can help soften that a little bit and help you, go with the flow a little bit more and be more okay with the way things are. Also, this aspect can represent self-sabotage, and this eclipse is on the South Node in Scorpio, which Scorpio is a sign of sabotage, self and others, just depending on the scenario. So, that can be hard. We can find ourselves self-sabotaging, especially through not giving up bad habits, which I know I addressed earlier, but that is one of the things that can show up here, is we could have something that we know in our lives is not helping us, but we can find that we get caught up in the cycle of it. Now, we can also be unsure about how to move forward in the area of life where Mars is in your chart. And it's almost like our desire will be stronger to move forward, but it's the path is so blurry, we just don't really know what to do. The next aspect I wanted to talk about is Jupiter trining the moon. So with this happening, sometimes this can be family recharging our spirits. There is a gentleness and a nice energy here. So we have a lot of different energies layered into this whole eclipse where, from one hand, we have the inner tension and the desire to move forward and the inability to know what to do. And that square to Mars just making it agitating and irritating, possibly making us feel like we need to move forward more urgently. This is another symptom of eclipse season, is we just feel like we need to do something. And during the actual eclipse, like on the day of, it's recommended not to do that because it's just a feeling, okay? It's just a feeling. And another thing with Jupiter trine the moon, we can attract opportunities. So to me, this feels like, it's not like, I feel like we have a lot of energies happening. And so most people are going to have some areas of life that are going to be more tense, that Mars is going to really come through. We're not going to know what to do. There's going to be pressure. And then we're going to have some other areas of life where maybe something does open up, or we're just able to relax and have a camp out with our families or enjoy something with people that we wouldn't normally enjoy. So it's almost like, if something gets taken away or removed in our lives, that we'll be able to work with it and just make the best of it. This feels like making the best of it. And again, it depends on who you are, how that's going to show up. So now we are moving on to the rising signs. So we are going to go through the rising signs, and I have some notes here for what it means for each one of you. So Aries, this is happening in your 8th house, which is other people's money, transformation. So you could be dealing with, changes in terms of loans, debt, accounting. You could be dealing with taxes, inheritances, sometimes like money in a divorce. Those kind of things could be coming up. It could also be a time of change to your intimacy. So you could be having changeovers in an intimate partner, or just situations where you go deeper intimately with certain people, or somehow that changes in your life. Who you are really, really close with could have a change also. So while this is happening, you can be realizing that challenges in your 11th house of friends and hopes and dreams, you might feel like you have to take responsibility to step up to your dreams. You might have friends or groups of people who are putting some kind of limitations on you in some way, or you might feel guilty about something from the past related to those topics. But you're also going to be open to change in your 12th house. Now, for some, this is going to be a lack of motivation. For others, it'll be open to change. So are you open to change your psyche, your shadow work? Are you suddenly, willing to look at that shadow that you never looked at before? That's one way this could show up. Also, lacking motivation in your 12th house might be someone who is just not really on top of their spiritual routine, spiritual hygiene, whatever that means to you. So now moving down to Taurus. For Taurus, this lunar eclipse is happening in your 7th house of partnership, and that can be significant others. Now, just because it's an eclipse in your 7th house doesn't mean you're going to lose a relationship. It can mean that you are going to have some kind of change in your relationship. Sometimes it can be a change to your partner's life that it affects you. Or in some cases, it can also be dealing with business partners. For anyone who does a lot of one-on-one client work, they also fall in the 7th house. So that can be changes to clients if that applies to you. You can also have lessons, guilt, or responsibility in your career sector at this time. You might be feeling regret over something you didn't do in your public image, your public life, your legacy, your purpose, your calling. Or you could have more responsibilities at work at this time that you have to step up to. And this may be more for some Tauruses, a feeling of guilt or need to really look at, what could have been in this area of life, but it can also be stepping up and rising to a challenge, being willing to now really face the responsibility that you need to take in that area. And then there's an openness to change in your 11th house. So you might feel, like you really want to change who you're friends with. You might find that you are less motivated to go out at this time. But it can also be something where you're like ready to change, ready to make a change to your hopes and dreams. Like maybe you're revising those and now you're not sure. There might be a lack of clarity here. You could also find that you are changing up your friends. Again, wanting to change those friends, wanting to expand your horizons and meet some new people. You could be wanting to meet new spiritual people as well. You might want to dissolve your ego or dissolve your will when it comes to something in a group setting. You might be joining groups of people who that is the focus, like meditation groups or something like that. For Geminis, it's happening in your 6th house of daily routine habits and your lifestyle, work, things like that, daily schedule. So, this is a release in this area. So it can be a need to change how you work, a need to change your routine, your fitness, your health, a focus on what you're eating or what you're doing with your body on a regular basis. It can also be a focus on work schedules, work routines, putting out higher quality work. Occasionally, 6th house transits can also put us in touch with like mentors and teachers. So for some people, that topic may be a focus as well. Now, Saturn is squaring over to that 6th house from your 9th house of the meaning of life, our philosophies, the deeper meaning. So you may find that you are possibly, becoming more strict, rigid, or, paring down certain beliefs that you've had up until now. You may find yourself questioning beliefs you've had in the past and wanting to revise them, revisit them, or somehow, change them, learn from the mistakes or the lessons you've learned from certain belief systems or faiths that you've practiced in the past. Saturn in the 9th can also be wanting to step up to a new belief system or a new faith that you have now, whether that be conventional or just something that you believe in that's like a wisdom tradition. So that's showing up here for you Geminis. You guys also have this openness to changing your 10th house. Now, some of you may be feeling more motivated in your career, like ready to go, but that Neptune can put a fog on things. So it's like you want to move forward in career, but maybe don't necessarily know exactly what to do. There's also an openness to change here, a readiness to really, get what you want when it comes to your career, your highest potential, and, your dreams, your high, the high point of glory in your life, that midheaven, that culmination, of that life purpose. So that is what I see for Geminis. For Cancer, this is happening in your 5th house of creativity, romance, children, and it is being squared by Saturn in your 8th, and you have the motivation happening in your 9th house. So the eclipse in your 5th will be a release of something related to your children, your creativity, your self-expression. Sometimes this can be like, letting go of it could be like letting go of a hobby or something, but it's more likely a change in, how you express yourself, how you have fun. For some Cancers, maybe you've been having too much fun. Now you're ready to get back to work or something, or something changes and you don't have as much time to spend with your kids that you had before, things like this. For some Cancers, it can be something in your child's life has changed and kind of released a little bit, but really, that 5th house I always think of as the house of like being in the moment and connecting with people in the moment, that sort of self-expression, that desire to be engaged with life. And so, that's what's being highlighted here by this eclipse. And it could be something where, again, you've been engaging with life a lot and now it's time to pare down a little. But it can also be just something changing in your hobbies, what you do for fun, things like that. So then Saturn in the 8th house here, that's going to be a challenge when it comes to feeling guilty about possibly like things related to intimacy or, really deep connections with other people. You may find yourself realizing some lessons about that, 8th house of intimacy, about how you connect with people, whether you let people in or not, that are coming to your realization here. They wouldn't be necessarily things that are happening now, probably as much as reflections. For some Cancers, this will be a desire to step up and be more like, be more mature in terms of your relationships. Take responsibility in some way, maybe for someone who you are financially responsible for, or someone who you are, connected with on a deep level. You may find that you are the rock for someone else at this time, who is going through some kind of transformation, or you may be going through some transformation yourself that deals with really kind of challenging lessons relating to you and other people and just the depth of those connections. Now, Mars and Neptune are in your 9th house, bringing this desire to, have faith, desire to connect to something that has more meaning. This can be like a more deeper area of study where you want to go deeper into a topic and know more about it. It could be travel. It can be the law, something that represents like those high ideals of Jupiter, that deeper meaning of life philosophy, the things that really matter, that are more long-term. Now with Neptune here, this could make you feel more unsure about pursuing that direction, like not really knowing what way to go. Or it can also be more inspiring and spiritual. Like you could have some kind of spiritual teacher sort of teach you the art of allowing, something where you're kind of subduing that Martian energy, how to not be so angry. That could show up too here. But it could also be more like spiritual action. Right, spiritual action, spiritual warrior kind of energy in those areas of life, of the law, foreign travel, or something like that. So like one person in this group could like go to another country and try to teach your own spirituality or religion or something. That's like one potential. But for everyone, this can be either, softening the will when it comes to those 9th house topics of like publishing or philosophy or the meaning of life, the law, or travel. Or it can also be just that strong desire that you want to move forward in this area and that Neptunian influence going on. It's fuzzy right now. It's not clear what steps to take to proceed. Now moving on to Leo, this is in your 4th house of home, family, roots, your family of origin. This is the eclipse. The eclipse is hitting this axis. So it can have to do with your family of origin. It can have to do with your current home that you live in. For some, moving, sometimes it's when you get more rooted within yourself, maybe changes inside the home, like changes to the physical space or to who is living with you or not living with you. Those can all be happening here. Now, Saturn is in your 7th house squaring this eclipse. So this can be lessons, things you've realized, things you want to kind of learn, even a feeling of guilt for how you've had relationships up until now. There could be a challenge or an obstacle in your current relationship that maybe affects your home life. And, finding ways to overcome that obstacle. For some Leos, I don't want to predict like separations, although that could happen. For a lot of people, it's more like, karmic things in relationship where you have to step up and handle the challenges and like, being almost forced to deal with anything you've sort of avoided in relationships up until now, especially as it pertains to your own life purpose. So kind of karmic contracts in relationships almost. Now, for some Leos, this could show up as a positive influence as somebody stabilizing you, finding a business partner, having your partner that you can really rely on. But for others, it'll be more like the challenges, feeling isolated in your relationship, things like that might be coming up at this time. Mars and Neptune are in your 8th house. This could be a very, very good time for intimacy with Mars and Neptune here, because Mars and Neptune by itself can be like tantra, or other like kind of spiritual sexual practices, and it's in your 8th house of intimacy. So I'm not going to lie, Leos, if you're into that, this would be a time where you might just feel more drawn to those kind of things. There may be a partner in your life who is healing to you. There could also be, I feel like for some, if there has been any abuse, and this won't apply to everyone, perhaps being able to heal from the consequences of that in your life. And that could be deal with yourself or other people that you know that topic is connected to. The 8th house is also the house of the other side. So having Mars Neptune here, you might feel really inspired and motivated to connect with your spirit guides, or to connect with, any deities or gods or goddesses, planets, planetary energies, whatever you are connected to or believe in, that you want to like harness that energy of, really being able to, with Neptune here, it's like it's almost like a receiver, even though I wouldn't call Neptune that. In this case, it feels like that. Neptune in the 8th receives those messages from the other side. But with Mars here, it's almost like either you're more inspired to act on that, something, maybe mediumship can also be a factor here. So we're going to move on now to Virgos. This is happening in your 3rd house of communication. Saturn is in your 6th house of daily schedule routines. And then you have Mars and Neptune in your 7th house of partnership. So the 3rd house, being the eclipse house, can cause a loss or a change to your transportation, your communication, your neighborhood. So it's possible you could move, changing your neighborhood, move to a different neighborhood for some reason. You could also have changes with your siblings, because that's another aspect of this house. But it really is, the 3rd house, I think mostly is like short day-to-day communication. So changes to how you communicate, how much time you're spending communicating with people, how much time you're spending doing, Virgo type things, which I mean, like, speaking, writing, planning, organizing. Some of those things could be in focus at this time. You might be shifting some of that stuff up, especially with Saturn in your 6th house of daily routines. So it's like how you communicate on a daily basis, what strategies you're using, what your work schedule is, who you're talking to. Some of that could be under the radar here. With the Saturn in the 6th, you could also be feeling guilty about how you've treated your body in the past, or how much time you've wasted not working as hard as you could be, right? So you might be feeling called to step up and be more productive with your time. And that's what I really feel for Virgos, is that this might be more about productivity and really wanting to use your time to your advantage. Now, that could be because you meet someone and now you can't waste as much time. You're in a relationship, you need more time for that. And so now talking about Mars Neptune in that 7th house for Virgos, in this case, I'm really drawn to Neptune as the image that we portray to people that isn't always who we are. So Mars Neptune is a time where don't get catfished. And don't be a catfish, Virgo. Because that Mars is like sexuality and desire, and Neptune is like a beautiful thing that isn't really beautiful, so however that applies to you, that's just one way this can show up. Other ways this can show up is, again, a desire for a relationship, but then with Neptune, it's like, I don't know how to even get this. I don't even know what to do. Feeling that confusion around the topic. It could also go the other way with like spiritual healing in a relationship, where someone super sexy comes in and just is also so spiritual and so gentle and so like kind and healing, but watch out that they are who they say they are. That's true with Neptune in the 7th for the whole transit, but with Mars energy infused, it just makes it a little more aggressive almost. So make sure someone is not like trying to deceive you in relationship and love. You can still have fun, it doesn't mean you have to like be paranoid or anything, but just make sure if something seems too good to be true relationship wise, right? If someone's picture on their Tinder seems way nicer, then like just make sure you get them on a live video and see if they're actually a real human being behind that picture. So you can apply that to anything else in your own 7th house, whether you are single or coupled. Remember too, 7th house transits, if you are not coupled, can also be business partners. or it can show up as, the desire to have the relationship, the thoughts and the feelings about relationship. It's not always going to be meeting someone. So moving on now to Libras, this is in your second house of money, property, what you own, what you have, your skills, your self-esteem and self-worth. Saturn is in your fifth house of children, creativity, the present moment, having fun. And then you have Mars and Neptune in that sixth house of daily routines and schedules. So that second house, eclipse, there is going to be a change to your money, right? Change to your money. This can be to your own skills, to how much money you make. This can be raises. This can be working at new positions, getting a second job. If you didn't have a job, getting one. If you had a job, losing one. It can just be any kind of changes to your income. Those are going to be the most common. Now, occasionally, maybe you might build more skills in that second house, especially because you have that sixth house being highlighted as well. So this might be a time where you're considering really how to be resourceful, how to do something on a regular basis. It's going to bring you some more money. Those kind of things can be highlighted. This can also be now you have more time and something, good opens up as well, right? So it could be that way where you get some money and now you don't have to work as much. That's another way this could show up. With Saturn in your fifth house, you might be revisiting feeling guilt or feeling, the need to kind of go over in your head the lessons of how you have been dating, whether you've been dating or not, how much fun you've been having, your children, whether you are a good parent if you have children or something else like that. Now, for some people, the Saturn in the fifth will be almost like a partner that you meet, like you meet someone and you want to be better for them, right? Or it can also be, with Saturn here, this can make you feel like you're not having any fun. And for some of you, you might want to step up and start, engaging more with life and really, having more discipline and structure in your creative activities or with your kids. So then, that sixth house with Mars and Neptune here, this is going to be motivated to change your schedule, change your routine, have a better diet. But with Neptune here, it can dissolve your willpower. So it's almost like you want to, lose weight, but then you have no ability to do the diet or, something else like that where even with Mars here, it can be more challenging. It could be more like almost like food stress or stress around your workouts or routines. You could be hitting it really hard with your workouts and then feeling like I have no idea if this is working. That's one way this could show up, and another way is that Neptune can dissolve Mars. So again, you could just have no motivation at this time to do your daily activities. And that could be for several reasons, but that is what I have for Libras. Moving on now to Scorpio, you guys have this in your first house of your identity, your body. And then you have Saturn in your fourth of home, roots, family. And then you have Mars and Neptune in your fifth house of creativity and fun. So having that lunar eclipse in your first house, this is going to be stronger felt for you Scorpios because this is your rising sign. And that means that, everything happening in Taurus is opposing your rising sign. It's on your descendant. So, at least your seventh house, right? Some of you may not be exactly on your descendant, but still. So what can happen with eclipses in your first house is changing your identity, changing your perception of yourself. This can show up as a change in your body, like your weight or your image. It could also show up as a change in how you do your hair, what clothes you wear, that kind of stuff. Sometimes first house transits can be moving because it's where your physical body is changes. So that can be happening for some Scorpios. Now, you guys can also have, again, psychological changes to your identity. And this can be, sudden or more of a slow burn where it just kind of, you change what you think about yourself. And so I think of like mindset work, but I also think of sometimes you'll have a change in life that then makes you feel like a new person. That can happen too here. Now, having Saturn in your fourth house, you could have discipline, you could have lessons that you have to step up to in your home. You may have to like step up and fix something in your home. You may realize or have guilt about something from the past relating to your own home, how you are in your home, how you take care of your house, or how you are with your family. You might realize that certain things that you want to change. You might want to step up and be more of a rock for the people in your family. You may have to, or you may have other like challenges that happen at this time with your family of origin. And then with the Mars Neptune in your fifth house, this can be a desire to get laid. Or for some of you Scorpios, it can be a desire to date more, to get creative, your creativity. This would be a really, really good transit for creativity for Scorpios because, Mars is going to kind of stimulate Neptune, and Neptune's like inspiration and dreams. So this is a really, really good transit for like doing creative work, especially like if it has to do with the visual arts. This can also be, a desire to date more, date beautiful people. That can show up here. And you could also find that you have a crush on someone that you just don't have the will to go after them at this time. So that is what I have for Scorpio. For Sagittarius, this is happening in your 12th house of isolation and loss and the subconscious mind, self-sabotage. Saturn is in your 3rd house of communication, and Mars and Neptune are in your 4th house of home, family, and roots. So for Sagittarius, this 12th house eclipse is going to be a change in your possibly your subconscious mind. It can be releasing subconscious things that you don't want to carry anymore. It can also be something to do with your own self-sabotage, where you're letting go of a self-sabotaging tendency. That can show up here too. For some, the topic of isolation, like 12th house is like trips away, right? Trips to a monastery, trips to a retreat. In some cases, trips to jail, hospitals, or mental institutions. I'm not saying all you Sages are going to be going to those places, but those themes could be coming up for some of you. So I don't want to, skip it just because it's negative. However, a lot of times with 12th house, a 12th house lunar eclipse, the way it feels to me is like there might be some kind of loss happening here. And it might be something that, it could be a various different levels here for the different Sagittarius out there, but there might be a need to just surrender and let go of something here. Now, with Saturn in your 3rd house, you may find that you are facing responsibility or going over lessons in your mind of how you have been in your communication, how you've communicated. You might realize ways you want to change and be a better communicator. You might find that these lessons apply to your siblings, where you're seeing a need to kind of step up and mature and be more there for your siblings. For others, it could be a block from one of your siblings, like a karmic block where they are not like letting you do something you need to do. For those who have siblings, some of you that'll apply to, some of you it won't. And for others, it could be, need to step up and be more disciplined in terms of how your transportation, how you treat your car, how you treat your vehicles. That can all be showing up. Mars and Neptune in the 4th here can be, this desire to have a home, to have a better home, to have a more beautiful or spiritual home, to make your home into a spiritual sanctuary or have an altar in your home to bring, that Neptunian softness and spiritual side and compassion to your home in some way. For others, this can be something to do with the family of origin, or maybe you want to heal some old patterns with the family of origin. Sagittarius, this is a deep transit for you. This is a deep one because it's like that 12th house and that 4th house with Neptune in it really feels like maybe resolving some things that started at a young age. maybe resolving some things, healing some things, having to do with your own feeling of being at home in your own body. This can be working on your nervous system and regulating it more. Things like this. Maybe you lose something that actually helps you have a more regulated nervous system. Maybe you lose some thought patterns that were not serving you. Maybe you lose some of that mental chatter because that Saturn in the third maybe is stabilizing for you in some way. So that's what I have for the Sagittarius is out there. Now moving on to Capricorn. You guys have this in your 11th house. So that's groups, friends, hopes, and dreams. And Saturn in your second house of money, skills, what you have, what you own. And then Mars and Neptune in your third house of, communication, transportation, your immediate environment, and siblings. So having this eclipse in the 11th house, this is going to bring up a potential, loss or a release of something to do with your hopes and dreams or your groups of friends, any of the groups you belong to. Some Capricorns may stop, attending a certain group they used to. You may not feel like you fit in there anymore. You could find that, there's some kind of loss within your friend group. One of your friends loses something, they have a loss. You could also find that there's just changes with how you want to show up with your friends, what kind of things you want to do when you are out in groups of people, what kind of things you don't want to do, maybe what kind of things you have time for, since their second and third house are also connected to this. Now, with Saturn in your second, you may find that you are wanting to make more money. You are going over, looking at the lessons of financial like strategy, financial strength, financial planning, and really wanting to step up and see, how can I manage my money better? Now, for some of you, this is, how can I manage my money better so I can go after my dreams? And there may be something within your hopes and dreams that maybe recently you didn't get to do because you didn't have the money. That could be part of what's motivating this. And then, with the Mars, Neptune in the third, Mars is a planet of action. It's desire. So you might be really busy at this time. Capricorns might have a lot of errands to run because errands are in the third house. But with Neptune here, it softens things. It makes it more confusing, or it makes it more spiritual. So, you could be busy doing things that maybe have a divine purpose to you. You could be finding that you are having more conversations with spiritual people, with people who are like Neptune, right? More space cadets, more like out there spiritual people, more like go with the flow, whatever, man, let's just smoke some weed kind of people. That could be happening for some Capricorns. And for others, again, you could feel motivated to take action in your third house of teaching and learning. So some Capricorns may want to be really inspired right now to learn more about the meaning of life, learn more about Neptunian topics like meditation, like transcendental meditation, especially with it being in your third house of the mind. So you might be wanting to learn techniques to quiet the mind. You may be finding you feel a little agitated in your mental state, or you go from agitated and confused, and you want to find ways to work on that or learn how to deal with that or focus on that. Those are all potentials here for Capricorns. And now moving on to Aquarius. Aquarius, this is happening in your 10th house of career. You have Saturn in your first house of identity, and you have Mars and Neptune in your second house of money, skills, and self-worth. So having that 10th house lunar eclipse, this could be a time where you want to change, or there are changes happening to your career, your role in life, right? Because not everyone has a career. Not everyone works for a living, right? So we all have a 10th house. So changes to your role in life, definitely. With that Saturn in the first, this can be a time where you find that you feel guilty about how you have perceived yourself in the past, or how you have presented yourself in the past, or a desire to step up and get more responsible and just infuse those Saturnian qualities into your personality of being on time and being respectful and respecting authority. I don't think Aquarius are going to want to do that, so forget I said that. But there may be a need to respect authority at this time. There may be a need to show respect to a boss, or show respect to a someone else who's higher in your field in some way. That can show up here. With Saturn in the first, you can also be feeling like you want to step up and be a different person. You want to change your identity, but it's not going to happen fast, and it's not going to be easy. I'm going to be this kind of person who has this kind of job now. that kind of feeling, and really working on some of the mindset work or the changes that you need to make in like where you live or whatever in order to have that 10th house that you want, that career that you want. Now, for some, this could be moving, like relocating for a job that pays you more so you can, earn for the future, or relocating for a job where you get to learn new skills that you're really confused about, that help you get to that, higher level in career. That's one way this can show up. And with that second house, Mars, Neptune. Mars is motivation. So you might be feeling very money motivated at this time, but you also might not know how to get more money or how to proceed in the area of money or skills, life direction. You can also be finding that you want to bring somehow more spiritual practices into your money. So whatever that looks like, being grateful for your money, or, somehow like cherishing and honoring the money that you have. Something like that could be happening, or you could be somehow blending those energies there when it comes to that. It can also really highlight your property, what you own, wanting to own property, wanting to have more things, wanting to let go of all your things. Okay, some Aquarius might want to like just get rid of all their stuff and become a minimalist and like go to another country where you can work for less money and just live a little bit more simply and be that different person. Now that's one just extreme example, but take what resonates here and leave the rest. So the next is Pisces. So for Pisces, this is happening in your 9th house of faith, the meaning of life, and long distance travel. And you have Saturn in your 12th house of isolation. You have Mars and Neptune in your 1st house of identity. So Pisces, that 9th house lunar eclipse can be causing changes to your faith, your belief systems, you wanting to go on a trip or not go on a trip, travel if that applies to you, the law, philosophy, things that are meaningful. So for some Pisces, this could be a change where you are done with a trip, done with a long-term body of work that you've just published. And now it's like, you release something out into the world. For others, this can be just changes to how you communicate. And, that 9th, 3rd house axis is going to be the difference between, these long-term voyages or long-term forms of communication versus these like day-to-day communication. So, for Pisces, this can show up in many different ways, but it's most likely to affect how you feel about your faith, your belief systems, what matters to you, and what is most meaningful. Now, there can be a loss of a certain type of belief system, right? This can be someone walking away from a belief system. This can be ending a trip, ending a travel, deciding not to go, something that ends regarding something legal, not illegal. And then, something regarding teaching can also go in that 9th house. So that's another topic, teaching or learning, that could be in focus at this time. Now you have Saturn in your 12th house of isolation. So Saturn being there in the 12th can make you be feeling kind of guilty, even when you're not actually. Saturn in the 12th, that transit will do that for you, to you. So Saturn can make you feel like you're ready to step up and handle things in your subconscious mind or your self-sabotaging tendencies that perhaps you have not handled up until now, or, not handled all the way. It can also make you want to, be better in terms of that area of life. So you might want to step up and be more spiritual, take more time out to meditate, really connect to your dreams. You could be feeling the need to have discipline in this area, like to write down all your dreams and understand what they all mean, or, really get to the bottom of what's happening with your subconscious mind. So again, for Pisces with Saturn in that 12th house, you might be wanting to really get to the bottom of and understand and be responsible for the skeletons in your closet, so to speak, the things that are within your subconscious mind, really wanting to find structure in possibly, routines that support you and having almost like energetic hygiene when it comes to that subconscious mind, your dreams, the things that are like self-sabotaging. You could be wanting to apply discipline to an area of life where up until now you've found yourself in some self-sabotaging patterns, or you may find that there are some challenges coming up regarding the topics of mental health, addiction, isolation from society, and that could be you or someone else in your life that you are currently dealing with. And it does feel, though, with this Saturn squaring the nodes on this eclipse, that it's like this is a karmic thing, you know, this is a karmic obstacle, not to be ran away from, but to be faced and seen and stepped up to and, you know, followed through with after, you know, understanding the lessons. So some Pisces may find they are needing to dig within their subconscious mind, wanting to sort of open themselves up more to what lies beneath those, you know, what lies beneath the exterior. Now you have Mars and Neptune in your first house. So, you know, Mars is going to be that inspiration to act, but Neptune really softens things. Neptune is your ruler. So Neptune in the first can really make you feel not sure about your identity. You could want to make changes to who you are at this time, but you may find you don't know how to do that. You might want to take some action related to who you feel like you are that is, you know, making you more spiritual at this time. You might want to infuse more transcendence, oneness, crown chakra energy into your life. You may find you are more in tune and attuned to the suffering of all beings, and you may want to take action on that. Beware, Pisces, for you guys especially, of the desire to help people that maybe are trying to swindle you or, you know, con you or something, just because that Neptune is there in your first house. But also, you know, Mars Neptune, you could find you just can't be bothered to do anything, and that is pretty strong for you because this is in your first house of identity. You know, the first house is a very strong transit. And so other people might, you know, other Pisces might feel motivated to change your personality, your life, right? Because the first house represents life changes. And so you might want to change your life and be more spiritual. You know, that's another way. Want to bring more Neptunian themes into your life. Now, the theme of Neptune can go so many different ways, right? It could be with ghosts or, you know, the other side. It can be your spiritual side. It can also be, though, like things like glamour. You know, you might want to become more glamorous at this time. It can be things like water, anything dealing with water. You might be infusing that into your life at this time, and that can be big, to like boats, to like, you know, using essential oils. So the way that this can show up can range on many different ways, but I do feel that Mars and Neptune conjunct in that first house, you know, for some Pisces, this can also be like dreaming of the kind of partner you want to have, and, you know, having more passion, more of a desire to, like, you know, carry out passion in your life, a desire to be more passionate. But again, that Neptune there could subdue it and soften it just a bit. So now we are moving on to the mundane astrology portion of this video. Now, I do want to say, if you are interested in this and you did not watch the last video on the solar eclipse in Taurus, I highly recommend watching the end of that video, where I talk about a lot of the themes that are coming up for the eclipse cycle from that eclipse. Now, that eclipse and this eclipse, they are on similar cycles, so a lot of the themes are going to be the same. So instead of repeating everything I said in that last video, you should go watch that part of that video. You should watch the whole video. And then in this video, I'm just going to talk on other themes that could potentially show up at this time, you know, historical themes that I didn't talk about in the last video. And so this is just simply, you know, making the connection between what was happening during the last eclipse cycle and seeing if there are any themes that could possibly show up in our daily life now in the world. So the first thing here, in medicine, the first successful non-direct blood transfusion using anticoagulant was done during this transit. So again, we could see, you know, some kind of possibly new medical procedure, you know, that's done for the first time at this time. In tech, the Sasser worm was spreading, and it became like a big deal because it could infect computers using Windows directly without user interaction. So, you know, a computer virus. Now, what this could look like now, if this theme does get repeated, is some other kind of thing like this, probably not exactly the same thing, but it's just something that could possibly show up here. In economics and trade, this was interesting. In May 2004, Russian President Vladimir Putin announces that his country will pursue ratification of the Kyoto Protocol. So this is basically where they put trade restrictions on non-participating countries. You want to guess what countries were involved? Australia and the United States. So we already see this theme strongly coming up here now. In May of 2004, there was this stock market panic, especially in India. This panic selling happened. And so that was the thing that happened where it's just something to be aware of. And then on April 1st of 1986, world oil prices dipped below $10 a barrel. Now we already again see a theme right here with the trade with Russia and then oil. So that's really interesting as well. In transportation, there was a vessel, SS Southern Cross, that was spotted and it disappeared. Now there is also, it disappeared and sunk. There were people on board. There was also, I couldn't find this one when I tried to look it up again, but there was also a plane, a pilot that disappeared at a different year during this transit as well, in a Latin American country. And so possibly things disappearing could be a part of this transit. So that was the theme that we saw here. Another theme that I saw is new roads and railways being opened. Now this may or may not show up now, as now may not be a time of lots of building, but it's possible that like a tunnel or something like that in the world could open at this time. In astrology, this one was just really interesting. In May of 2004, which was during this Saros cycle, the Supreme Court of India made a judgment that Vedic astrology is a science. So I thought that was really cool that, you know, that made it now recognized as an actual science. So that's interesting. In human rights, in May of 2004, Chilean President Ricardo Lagos signs legislation legalizing divorce. The FDA blocked the sale of the morning after pill, despite the 23-4 recommendation to not block it. So that was interesting. In March of 1914, there was a suffragette named Mary Richardson who used a meat chopper to deface a painting. Okay, so it's called the Rockabye Venus. Now, this is one where she's laying on the, laying down. There's a little Cupid holding up a mirror to her, and she's looking at her face. And so this lady, Mary Richardson, was protesting the imprisonment of Emmeline Parkhurst, who was founder of the Women's Social and Political Union in Great Britain. So this was just something so random and so very different that I wanted to share it. It was just kind of like a very almost grotesque, right, symbol of protest. And so protest is another thing we do see a lot in this cycle, but I'm not sure how much of that is this cycle or just life, humanity. So in other news, in May in 2004, there was some stuff around copyright infringement, where the Recording Industry Association of America sued 493 people. Nearly 3,000 people up until that point were sued. And so this was like just a time where that was happening, you know, where copyrights were being gone after. So this is a theme we could see possibly. So in other news, this is interesting. The Mexican Air Force actually released a video of 11 different UFOs that were captured on film. And so I just thought it was interesting. I think this kind of stuff is kind of interesting. But then, you know, some scientists came along and were like, no, it's just pockets of gas. But that did happen. And so, you know, that is something that it's possible we could see the theme of resurfacing or possibly not. Now, do keep in mind that for the bigger energetic themes of this cycle, those are going to be in the video on that Taurus solar eclipse. So be sure to watch that if you want more on, you know, the more really like heavy hitting themes that are happening. So now a recap on the energetic themes of this eclipse. Awareness of what we need to do to heal our emotional security, a feeling of destiny and a responsibility to step up to it, good timing to connect with people despite a possible feeling of loneliness. You know, it's like we're able to begin creating the community we crave. And you know, those are the major things. There were a lot of other little points, but those are the big heavy hitters for this lunar eclipse. Today is the last day to get 40% off of a 1 hour or 1.5 hour Zoom session with me. So click the link below to get in on that. You can also book more than one, so if you want to stock up, you are able to as long as there's availability. If you're watching this after and you didn't know about the sale, click the link to get on my email list. You'll get the guide Align with Your Midheaven, which teaches you how to align with the life you're meant for. And then you'll also be the first to know anytime I do a flash sale or any kind of sale in the future. So get on that list, and thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all of you so much. All of your comments, all of your support, all of your shares and your likes, everything you guys do, I appreciate you. So thank you for being a member of this community. Thank you for watching this video, and let me know in a comment below how it resonated, how it landed. I always love hearing from you, and I'll see you guys in the next video.